they wanted me to be a doctor. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Editors are the doctors of the industry.
Yeah.
Right?
Like people that are amazing fail at Marvel. Like it's so hard. I was looking at the footage and I was like, what are we doing? I was like, are people gonna watch this? I mean, I think AI can be useful.
It facilitated hiring actual people.
Yeah.
What would be your takeaway from your career, from the industry?
Be always nice. Don't always think you're better than everyone else, because it's not the case.
Hey everyone, I am Rafi Salem, back with Manhattan Edit Workshop, and today the Mew is talking with Nona Khodai. And did I pronounce that correctly?
You did, yeah.
All right. And of course, we've got Josh Apter and Jason Banke from Manhattan Edit Workshop. Josh, give us a little history. Take it away.
Our little history, the shortest story of a 20-year trajectory, right? Manhattan Edit Workshop started in 2002, I think. I don't even remember that far back because I was so young. I was like 6 years. It was really the idea of teaching people the why of editing as much as the how, right? Like, and I think in this day and age, you can certainly, it's a lot more accessible to people than it was then to go on YouTube and learn about pushing the buttons and, you know, how to perform that feature. I just helped somebody figure out how to have time code pop up on the source monitor in Final Cut Pro in 2 seconds. And that's part of it, but we've always been committed to teaching people a deeper understanding of the why. And to that end, we've had artists in residence come in to every 6-week art of editing intensive workshop, share their experiences, show their work. We study different kinds of editing, like, you know, we'll spend a week looking at nonfiction. We'll spend a week looking at the history of editing from its beginnings to like contemporary styles. And so that's as much a part of it as I think as anything. And then we get, you know, lucky and we get to talk to editors like Nona about their work. And it's that's the part that's really fun for me. I mean, look, I love teaching people, you know, Command Z or whatever. But this is really, I think, the heart of it, right? Like understanding this helps you take those tools and apply them in a way that the way they're meant to be. So that's a long way of saying what we do and what we've been doing for over 20 years. I hope that's a satisfactory reply.
Well, I've been with Josh for many of those years. I was a student, and then he kept me around. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but it's worked out well, and we've been growing the company together and doing many different things over the course of the. I guess I was 12 years, 14 years of.
You were a student first, Jason, in the 6-week class. I mean, so that's how we met.
Yeah, 2006. Final Cut Pro 7. Yeah, and so we've grown it, and we're doing these great. We've done so many events and stuff like that. We started something called Filmmaker U, and that's how I got in touch with Nona, who I passed over because I thought you said great things to say and stuff like that. So I passed you over to our director of education, Janet, who got you to come in as an artist in residence. So that's the kind of how we're in the full circle here. But yeah, I mean, it's great to have you on. I think you have such a variance of awesome work and stuff. And I know these guys were excited to talk to you too. So I guess we could turn it over to Nona and hear your story.
Where I started, yeah, sure. I'm from Orange County, California, Irvine, actually, where actually Will Ferrell's from too, which is weird, and he went to USC and I went to USC, but my parents are immigrants from Iran, and they immigrated in 1976, and both my sisters are doctors, and they wanted me to be a doctor. Or they wanted me to be a doctor. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I actually, Google there was a search engine, and I looked up, you know, and I love to dance and I love music. So I looked up what dance and music and movies kind of come together, and cinema came up, and I had not really heard of that before. And both my sisters actually had gone to USC, and USC popped up as like the best film school in the country. And I was like, well, I wasn't going to go to USC because it was so expensive. I was like, well, I'll just go somewhere cheaper. But then I was like, best film school, maybe I'll do USC. I didn't get in actually at first. I got into USC, but not the film school. And then I applied again my junior year and I got in. And that kind of started my career. And I actually fell into editing because I wanted to do sound, and sound was really difficult actually to like get into, just because the jobs were so rare. Like it was like a week here, a month off, a week there, and I just didn't like the schedule. And so I ended up getting into editing like out of a whim because my friend recommended me for a job, and then that lasted 2 years. I got in the union, and then another friend recommended me for Rambo 4 as an assistant, and then it just kind of catapulted my career. It took a while to get bumped up. I took about 8 to 9 years to be, you know, I was an assistant for almost a decade. And then I was working at Bad Robot, which is J.J. Abrams' company, on Super 8. And great thing about Bad Robot is that everybody kind of works in the same office. And so you meet the TV people and the film people and the TV executives. When the TV executives really, we got along really well, and she was like, hey, would you want to do a show? And I was like, sure. And so I assisted on a show called Alcatraz, which was one of their new shows, and that got canceled. And then me and that editor went on to Revolution, which is where I met Kripke, who created also The Boys. And that first season was a nightmare, and they bumped me up to do like dailies, and then they bumped me up for an episode, and then I stayed bumped up the entire time. But I bring this back to Kripke because he's the reason I'm editing. You know, he started, you know, so he believed in me and like nurtured me. So I worked on that show for 2 years, and then it got canceled. Of course, that's the nature of television. And then, you know, I went on and off jobs. Like I started working for like Carlton Cuse. So I did The Strain and Colony with them. And then weirdly enough, I went back to working with Kripke. He emailed me about The Boys. And that really kind of catapulted my career, because I met Matt Shackman on the first episode of The Boys I worked on. And he's the reason I was at Marvel, and I did Monarch. And so it's all about relationships is what I'll say. It's like, keep the relationships going, because you never know who will give you your opportunity or who will catapult your career. So
let's bring it back. You went all the way back, and then all the way back.
Yeah.
I'm most interested in how you resisted your family of not becoming a doctor. But before we get to that, when did your love? I mean, you have to love, and you have to be passionate about what you're doing. So, did your passion start in high school? Did you just want to be different from your sisters, or did it? You know, you were talking about USC, and then going to the best film school. So, give us a little bit of background, and then obviously, we want to hear about your relationship with Manhattan Edit Workshop and Filmmaker U. And
so I loved football, so I wanted to go to USC because I like me and my sisters like bonded over the football team. And I have lots of friends who love like watching football. But I love sports. I actually wanted to be a sports doctor, actually, because I was like a volleyball player and a soccer player, and I danced, I did tap dance, and I love, you know, and I played tennis. I would have loved to keep playing tennis, but tennis was really expensive and my parents couldn't afford it. But, you know, I like being active, and I like working with people. And I could have been a good doctor. I liked it, but one of my sisters, it took her a long time to get into med school, and they're a lot younger than, or a lot older than me. Like they're 13 and 10 years older than me. And so I kind of felt like I did the process of like one's a dentist and one's a OB/GYN, the dental school and the medical school with them. And I didn't want to go through it again for myself. I already felt like I went through the trials and tribulations of all of it. And like to have to repeat all of that, just couldn't, I didn't want to do it. Like I knew where I was going to go. I wanted a new path for myself. And so I kind of liked the idea of doing something a little hard, I'm the youngest, and you know, they did what mom and dad wanted us to do. And so it's like, well, I can steer a new path that's maybe hard, but if I fail, I can always go back. You know, I can always go and do that and have that as my fallback.
I don't know any doctors that have like the fall. I don't know any other film editor. Josh, Jason, maybe you guys know like doctors who are
Well,
like
editors are the
through this.
doctors of the industry,
Yes.
right? I mean, the patient's like suffering from bad acting or lack of coverage, or but if you look at how
Troubleshooting.
many, right? I mean, how many, and then sometimes the patient dies on the table. But you
Sometimes.
spent
Yeah,
X amount of years as an assistant. Like, I'm not saying it's the same process, but you did your time,
I
right?
did.
So if you look at how long someone went to medical school and dental school to get to what you could say is maybe a guaranteed outcome, where that's not so much what you
Yeah.
get in the entertainment industry.
Well,
You learned your discipline by being an assistant and apprenticing and kind of climbing that, but also your skills weren't just the various degrees. It was learning how to deal with people,
yeah.
obviously learning your craft. But like, you know, in terms of hard time, you said it was really the boys, and you had been doing it for 15 years or so, right? Since before you got that job. So I'm not
Yeah,
saying
since
they're the same thing. It's just
2004 or 5, I started
Mhm.
assisting. So yeah.
Yeah. So but look, you have to put your time in regardless, I would say. But
And I think that's the problem with, I think, not the new generation, but in general, like even I'm millennial, like I think people are like 4 years and then I'll edit. And it's like, no, I kind of love the fact that I assisted that long. I met a lot of people, and then all those people have helped me along the way. And you really get to work with the best if you work with the best, you know? And I climbed the ladder as an assistant. Like I worked on big movies. Like I worked on Mission Impossible 4 and Star Trek Into Darkness and Super 8. Like I worked on big movies before, you know, going back down into network TV again and starting up again. Like it takes years to get to the height of your assistant career, but then also to get to the height of your editing career. It
are you,
takes
well,
time.
are you looking to you're happy where you are? Are you looking to sort of, you know, it's the I guess the distinction between TV and features is sort of muddy these days, because
Yeah.
TV's so can be so often cinematic. But are
Yeah.
you looking to get into that format again, or do
Features? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm about to be there. So
Right.
but you know, it's like it takes a while. Like it doesn't take a long time for everybody. It's taken a while for me. That's all.
Mhm. Right.
And I wanted, and I've, you know, tried to get on features, but you know, TV kind of keeps sparking back at you a little bit when the good shows come along and you're like, okay, well, I'll do that because it's a better script or better people, better filmmakers, and you just
So,
Mhm.
so Jason, I think you'd be best to answer this. Is this the trend of a typical student at the workshop to basically have sisters that are doctors and then decide that they want to forge their own path? Like, tell us about students at the school, and then to
I
get
don't
to.
I don't know about I don't know about that. Maybe they're the rebels of the family, but definitely like putting your time in is definitely a reality. And I think that known as a testament that like it's just not real that you just necessarily jump right in and edit. You have to learn the process. It's just you know, and I know we had someone on the last recording we did who's doing internet stuff, YouTube stuff, which is a little different. But
Mhm.
the stuff that you're working on is so high level of, I mean, just the Marvel stuff alone is all connected and everything is so precise. And to get to that level right away is
You fail, and
yeah,
people will fail because that, I mean, they have hired people, and I've been witness to it where they've done one show and then gotten hired and they don't do well
yeah, the
because it's
stakes are
hard. It's too
high.
hard.
Yeah.
Nobody, I mean, like people that are amazing fail at Marvel. Like it's so hard.
What describe, so what would you say is hard about it, and how were you able
It's
to work
the
through that?
politics are hard. The cultures it's just, you know, you have to deal with a lot of different people. And you know, you have to be good and be able to fix. they really admire editors there, which is the best part of working there, is that they want you to fix it. They want you to fix the problem. They want you to come up with solutions. And if you can't do that, then you won't survive that world. You have to be able to come up with ideas and write sometimes. I'm not a good writer, but I come up with stuff sometimes, and you know, I have my assistants help me write because I'm terrible at writing, but you know, you have to come up with stuff like you know, and make things happen, even if you don't have the footage for it. Every show has a process, like everything's really, like even WandaVision, like WandaVision had really amazing scripts. The finale was really hard because we were shooting that during the pandemic and we didn't really have as many people, but all the shows are really hard to make look good, and they always want things rushed and to VFX, so like we don't always have the longest time to edit them, and then we have to fix within what we've cut, and so that's also hard because things have already been sent to VFX to process, and what if that's not working? And yeah, so that's why it's hard. It's a lot of money.
You touched upon one of the topics that we started talking about before. You are California through and through.
Yeah.
Right? You were educated in California, you've been working in California.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious what your experience is in California versus an East Coast New York experience.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything to compare it to. I mean, here, it's a right to work state there. Is that correct? Is that correct? So you don't have to be like 30 days or 100 days, or do you have to do that there for union? To being in the union?
I haven't the slightest idea.
So, I mean, if you want to work on all these shows, you have to be union. That's the main thing. Right? You have to be union unless you do an indie movie. And there's less indie movies here, I think, than there are in New York, is where it feels like, what it feels like. Here, it's like, luckily I worked at this company called Larry Levinson Productions, and they did Hallmark Movie of the Weeks, and they were non-union. And so I was able to get all my days, which I didn't even know I needed to do, but I worked there for 2.5 years. And all we did was like, we did like mini series, like we did an NBC mini series, I remember, called Blackbeard, and really good actors. They had a really good acting or casting director. So we got like, you know, what's her name from? Kristen Bell was in a movie, and the little girl from Little Miss Sunshine, that she was in one of the movies. Like we had other people like Tori Spelling, who was like decent, but like there were like pretty good actors in these movie of the weeks, and they were all on the Hallmark Channel, and it was shot on film, and you learned a lot. I learned a lot. I don't know if that company is around anymore, but everybody from that company is very successful that have worked there. One of my friends, Yuka Shirashuna, she just did Blue Eye Samurai, and she's won like every award. She's amazing. And the head of FX Post was our post supervisor. So like we have like so many people from that company that have gone and done really well. So it's crazy because we were like a really not great, like a Roger Corman style company, because they were all trained by Roger Corman at this company. And so it was kind of like run and gun, do it cheaply, and you know, fix everything. Like we fixed all the Avid stuff, all Avid problems ourselves. So it was a great way to train. So when you get into the bigger stuff, you were able to fix things easier because you know how to do it.
Well, I have a question about that, because it seems like there's some really high stress on these Marvel shows. There's a lot of stuff coming at you that's creative, but also just like, you know, pressure about it's not really. So do you think that you're just built that way? Like not every editor can handle that, right? So like you're talking about all that stuff that's kind of being thrown at you, and I'm like, geez, no wonder people fail. How did you know that you could handle that stuff? And how, like, what is it like just in your hardwired, or did you learn some of that stuff on like a run and gun Corman style, you know, studio like the Hallmark one?
I think you learn it from family. Honestly, like I was the youngest. I was always the one who like got the food. or when, you know, like if we went to go get pizza. Also, my parents were immigrants, so I did a lot for them. Like I did a lot of the, like, hey mom, I need a signature for this, or hey mom, I need this, or help them with, you know, their language skills weren't as great as, say, other parents. And so you learn to cope and you learn to deal with, say, a lot of like things like kids who grow up here with parents who speak English better than mine don't need to deal with. We weren't babied, you know. I'm more Gen X, I guess, than millennial in that way. Because you know, you kind of had to deal with it yourself. And I dealt with a lot growing up that most kids don't deal with. So I think that's part of it, as the way I grew up. And my sisters are both the same way. We're all A-type, weirdly enough.
Right. So you're but like A-type is great. And then at the same time, as an editor, you have to be prepared to lose every argument or battle you wage because, right. And that's, you know, how do you reconcile the A-type you with the, you know, servicing?
Being the youngest in a family who tells you what to do all the time. How about that? That's my reconciliation, because they still do it. And I'm like, I'm like way too old for them to keep telling me what to do, but that's kind of what it's like.
So the key to being an editor is be the third child of immigrant parents. Well, the rest writes itself.
I guess so. I don't know. And also observing a lot, right? Being so young in my family. Like I just observed always. I think I always like, and you know, you can just see all the relationships and how they work. And I do that with editing, right? You look at all the relationships and the eye lines and you kind of put two and two together. Like I feel like with friends, when you talk to them and they lie to you, to your face, I can tell that they're lying to me to my face because I can read people's faces really well. And like, yeah, I just, you know, people do lie to you like a lot, surprisingly. But as editors, we're kind of truth seekers, right? You can tell when people are lying. And just because like, if they're acting bad, they're bad actors.
Yep. Is that something you look at more than like, are you performance first, story first? Like, what's your sort of hierarchy of priorities?
I'm visual first. How about that? I'm more visual with story. I'm a very visual person. I'm not great at the dialogues. I mean, I like removing dialogue is what I'll say. I think too much dialogue, unless you're Sorkin, Aaron Sorkin, I don't love it. I think some of it's bad. Some of it can be performed bad, you know?
I mean, well, look, if the measure of, I don't know if this is even true, but like if the measure of a good movie is you can turn the sound off and understand what's going on, Sorkin he has no place there because it's so dialogue, you know, reliant, but not to say it's not snappy. No. Good. It's great. Like you can't believe somebody can actually come up with the things that those people are saying and then make it believable. But then there's room for watching. I was watching Erin Brockovich of all things with my youngest, who's very resilient, very observant. But there were just things in there that we noticed that like you get it without the sound. There's certain parts of that storytelling that are just completely visual, and you know, it's just that's good storytelling. So
absolutely. And that's what they teach at USC. Actually, all your movies have to be without dialogue. Actually.
In the beginning, the first ones, or not all of them?
All the first ones, and then the second class you can't have dialogue either. So you learn it's all visual storytelling with how to tell a story visually without dialogue, which is really important. And I think it's a good way to learn how to edit and learn how to tell a story, because I mean, your filmmaking skills aren't great at first, right? With the camera and cinematography, and some people are really amazing, but some people, like my films, were not watchable, I would say. And so you have to learn to put it together in a way that makes sense with sound and music, and you know, I think it's important.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved
the classroom. I love the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
Jason, you had touched upon this before. How did you find Nona? How did Nona find you? What's the relationship here? What's the history?
I think I was just doing some research. I watched WandaVision, and I think that was one of the first real COVID stuff that came out. I think I might have. And I was looking through who the editors were, and your name came up, and I was like, I talked to the guy that we work with, Gordon. I was like, hey, I was giving him a list of people, and I think that's why and you were working on something else right after. I don't remember what it was.
Ms. Marvel. I was doing Ms. Marvel, so I was on that.
I think that's why we brought you on, because we wanted to talk to you, because like that was a unique situation, and obviously that show did great. I mean, that was one of the first ones to put them really back for their Disney Plus. I think that was one of the first Marvel shows on Disney Plus, wasn't it?
It was the first Marvel Disney Plus. Yeah. So it came out, it was the first show after, I think, 2 years of nothing from Marvel.
Yeah.
I think it was right after, it was like Endgame before that. That was it.
Put out Black Widow weirdly.
Oh yeah, Black Widow. Black Widow. I don't know if Black Widow had come out yet, actually. They pushed it.
Yeah, because I'm sure you don't want to get into that. Why whatever.
I mean, I think, well, also we weren't the first Marvel show. We weren't supposed to be first.
That's right.
We had most of the show in the can. And
supposed to be Winter Soldier or something, right? Or whatever that was.
Winter Soldier, and they were having problems. They weren't happy with releasing it yet. And so, and I think also kind of kismet to have like the first Marvel TV show to be about television, about the upcoming. I mean, that feels more, it would makes more sense than having Falcon come out first. So I think that worked out, and we were like Kevin's little pet project, I think, too, because I was like, and we didn't test that show. I think that was the thing that was great, is that we never tested WandaVision, and I wonder if things would have changed if we had.
Do you think? I mean, because it was a love letter to television.
Yeah.
And like obviously, like younger viewers aren't watching Dick Van Dyke, and there's certain things that are just, they have to appeal to them in real time, not as nostalgia.
Right.
And of course, we all know like all of those shows from reruns and then getting into 70s and 80s. It's, it was kind of great to kind of have that feeling wrapped up in this other story.
Right.
But were you concerned that younger viewers would be like, why am I watching black and white? I don't get this. What's going on?
Absolutely. I was like, when I was looking at the footage, I was like, what are we doing? What is this? And I was like, are people going to watch this? I was so worried that people weren't going to watch. But we came out at the right time, when nothing was on television. It just worked out really well, and people loved it. I mean, there were people who didn't like it, but people pretty much liked it for the most part. And it was a really incredible, I got to go to Atlanta for 4 months to work on it. And then we came back, and then the pandemic happened. So we were 3 weeks at Disney working on it, and then the pandemic happened. And we hadn't even finished shooting yet. We were supposed to start in April shooting the rest of the show, because a lot of it was supposed to be on the back lot at Universal, but we ended up losing that back lot. So we ended up being at, I think, Warner Brothers back lot. So that was hard. I think that was hard on the director a lot, but we made it work as best as we could. So.
And besides everything that you've mentioned, is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you're working on now that you do want to let us know about?
Yeah, I mean, I worked on Monarch, which was great. And then I did the first 2 episodes, and that's coming back. And then I just finished a Bad Robot, back to, relationships. I went back to Bad Robot, and I worked on a Max original series called Duster. So that should be coming out next year sometime. That was fun. And it was nice to go back to Bad Robot and be in the office. So we worked in the office, which was fun.
It's
And
all over the remote work and like,
I don't know if it's over, but I don't like it personally.
but you have the option to go in. It's not like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people here in New York there. It's like, they're just editing from home on network drives and,
Awful.
they'll go and have periodic meetings, but it's not the situation it was when everybody worked like at a facility and there were TV shows going on and you all had lunch together and, so you can do it. You're not, it's up to you.
Well, this was Monarch, we didn't. Monarch was all fully remote. And I wanted to go in, but they said they weren't going to have offices until the writers got offices. And I think they put one Avid in the office for like VFX reviews. But most shows here are also remote. I mean, I think TV's remote, features are not. Unless you're JJ who wants you to be. I mean, JJ wanted us in the office. So we were office Tuesday through Thursday. So 3 days a week. And then we were remote Mondays and Fridays most of the time. But I'd come in as much or as little as I wanted, which was great.
You think he likes having people just kind of throw ideas around and interact with one another and that kind of stuff? Is that why he insists on that?
I think he likes the fact that we all had lunch together, and then we'd still keep working because we're talking about the show. And we came up with ideas to help the show. A lot of it surrounded music because music was really hard on that show. But ideas of like, what note did you get on that? How did you deal with that actor? Or, that kind of situation. And it was great because like we all talked to each other. The editors did anyways. We were really good friends and collaborated a lot. And there was 4 editors and there was 2 editors for the first block and the third block, and then me and another editor for the second block and the fourth block. So, and we ended up having the same directors the entire time. So 2 directors for the whole show. Just because we had the strikes were in between, and so they didn't want to disrupt the flow of like the directing. So that was just fun in general because they had different styles than we did. So yeah.
How does I guess the threat of another strike has been averted, right? I heard there's an agreement and right. I know. It's like I keep talking to people who are like, just stay alive till 25. That horrible. It's like, you gotta be kidding me.
That.
I know. And it's like, well, that's great, but that's like, over a half a year. And what do we do from now? Because I know there's been a lot of people in New York who are having, there's not a lot of work going around because I think people are not only, well, I don't know. You tell me what you think. I have people who say it's because the streaming is completely screwed up and they don't know what to do. So they don't want to make any more stuff because they blew it, and then there's the potential strike. But how's it been for you, and what do you think's going on?
I mean, I've been lucky. I was on Duster when the strikes hit, so I went straight from Monarch to Duster. We worked 5 weeks, and then the strikes happened, and we were shooting in Albuquerque, so we didn't actually we avoided the strikes for a little bit, and then they came and protested in Albuquerque, and then everything shut down. Warner Brothers shut it down. So I actually got lucky and gone on another show in between, Apples Never Fall, which came out too, and in March it came out. I did 1 episode of that, and then I was off for a little bit again, and then I went back to Duster once the strikes ended. So I worked a little bit, like 2 months out of the 7 months that I was off, which was bad. I was lucky. But I know people haven't worked in 18 months, maybe longer, and some people 2 years. I mean, I don't know if I would stay in the industry if I wasn't working that long. It is rough. I think it was a mistake to go streaming all at once. Like everybody went streaming. It's expensive, and I think the strikes maybe have made the studios realize they don't need as much content to survive. So they're raking in all this money from subscriptions and not having to pay it out as much. And I think that they see like, oh, we don't need to do this. And so they're slowing down. And part of, I think, why the strikes ended, it took so long, is I heard Netflix was trying to get their books in order, that they were in the red and they wanted to show a little less red. And that's why it took so long to do that. And so that's what kept it going on for so long. So I don't know. I think everyone trying to be into the tech world, it was a mistake. We had a good model with commercials and cable, and I think they messed it up. I think the studios, like, it's not always great to be, like, the tech industry is great, but like, they're not profitable. Like, Uber just became profitable after 13 years. Like, why was that the example? I don't understand. Like, why? I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. I think business wise, they were like trying to keep up, and then it didn't work.
So it's
Yeah, they must
interesting
have
that
known it was coming. Like that's just like they're smart enough to know that that model isn't sustainable,
Yeah.
but it was good for, shareholders or something,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm no expert. That's why we're all
Yeah, I'm
editors,
not
by the way,
either.
is because we don't play in that
No.
world. We're just, clean up the mess.
Keeping up with the Joneses is what they're trying to do, but like, that's not always the best way of business. Why slow and steady is not good anymore? I don't understand that. Just don't,
so
I mean, yeah.
so segueing into slow and steady into fast and streamlined and efficient, we had touched upon AI, what your take is on AI in the industry.
I mean, I think AI can be useful in certain ways, like say, and say you don't want to use your own voice because we have to use our own voices a lot for temp ADR, or people don't want to hear it. So you ingest, say, 11 Labs IO has a good one. Basically, it duplicates the actor's voice, and you can type in what you want, and it will spew out the line. And a lot of people, like, you're not supposed to use the footage from the show, so I end up like using footage from other parts of their career and ingesting it, because like I don't want them to, because it goes up in the cloud. You don't want to get sued or anything, so you ingest dialogue from other shows. If they've been in other shows, you can't always do it with new actors, but and then it spews out the line, and pretty good, I would say, like 80-70%, but it's better than my voice or my assistant's voice sometimes to put in. And you can kind of change up the speeds, and if you want to, like, say the line into the program, the inflections it'll copy your inflections and it'll bounce it back to you. So we tested that a bunch on the Duster. It wasn't always perfect. We couldn't always use it, but it was useful in some ways. Like, if you need a political figure, or like someone that's been big in the past, you can use their voice or whatever, because you have that. So, also Midjourney is good for concepts, like concept art. If you need like a conceptual thing for like a visual effect, or I think a VFX supervisor I worked with did that on a show, and that was useful.
So that's okay. So one of them, the ADR one, I kind of understand, because the process of having to get people wrangle them in and get them to do this, and in certain things where you just can't get like someone who's a political figure or something. But the concept art, well, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It just seems like that's putting a lot more people out of work. Stuff like
Probably.
that, right? That's like these AI architecture programs where it's like you used to have a group of junior people who would go and do concepts for a building or a configuration, and you can tell AI to just make like 9 different designs around the plumbing stem, and it's over in 5 seconds. And it worries me a little bit.
It worries me too. I mean, for this particular thing, we used it for because it's not the case. And also relationships are important. Keep relationships even if they're long. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And save your money. Live cheaply is what I'll say, especially in the early part of your career, so you can take opportunities like indies where they don't pay you that much, because you never know what can lead to success. And so yeah, those are the things I would
All right.
say.
Josh,
Yes, sir. Are you
takeaway?
looking for me? Oh,
Takeaway from
okay.
what
Well,
we've
no, I
learned from Nona?
was like, I love those takeaways already. I mean, that's great. Like, save your money, be nice. I mean, those are all, and look, I think being nice is great. Like, it's easy to be jealous and competitive. I've got an older child who's like wants to be in the music industry and everybody sucks but him. And it's like, no, you just got to identify that as jealousy, and everybody, like, you're only in competition with yourself. And it's a very difficult thing to understand when you're young, and probably even difficult as you get older, but to understand that, like, this is, it's not always about you, and just try to do the best work you can, and don't be a jerk. I was going to say a different word, but
All right, Jason, your
those are-
takeaway.
Yeah, sure. Those were all fantastic. I have two. One, first of all, like and subscribe and follow us on all our stuff, and
good
we
takeaway.
can find more great conversations like this. And the other one is, I can't believe Josh didn't say anything about USC being the greatest film school since he's an NYU.
I got rejected.
Oh,
Oh, did you get rejected for USC? I mean, I got
Yeah.
rejected from NYU. So
Well, I wrote in my
pretty
essay,
even.
I wrote this thing about how, because what's his name? Who did he was at John Singleton, right? He was like there. So I wrote this thing where he was in Time magazine being quoted saying, like, any idiot can, can know where to put the camera. You have to have something to say, which the accent's on, you have to have something to say. Of course, me, I'm like, I indict him for saying, like, any idiot can figure out where to put the camera. And I was like, I think he's wrong. And I think it takes a real person to and I'm like bashing him in my essay for USC, thinking they're gonna be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, guy from the East
this
Coast.
kid's going places.
Yeah, I don't know. That was an error, but it's true. Look, I have no problem with USC, AFI, UCLA, NYU, Columbia. They're great.
Schools.
Right. And none of them are a substitute for experience.
No.
Right. They're a great place to meet people and get started. But you said, again, your takeaway, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's all cumulative, and you have to just keep, if you don't want to make it, stop. That's a guarantee. Yeah. And if you want to, you just got to keep trying and trying and trying and trying.
It's funny because when I worked with Sylvester Stallone, he told me, he's like, the only reason I'm successful is because I'm persisting. Like, persistence is the winner. Like, I've had lots of failures in between. So
did you, I got a question about Rambo before we go.
Oh, no. Sure. Yeah.
Is that the one where at the end, like, he turns that whole group of people into pudding?
Yes.
Like that.
I worked on that.
Did you work on that? I mean,
that was my first union job, actually.
Oh
as the second assistant editor. Yeah, it was a fantastic movie to work on.
Oh my God. It was so funny, in the wrong way, in all the wrong ways. But you know what? Who am I to say? I did watch it, and then I watched the other one. I watched the last one too. Irresistible.
Jason, why don't you wrap things up with what's going on at the Manhattan Edit Workshop?
Sure. Yep, we have another 6 weeks starting in September, and I think we have someone lined up. We'll probably announce that soon for the artist in residence. That should be great. And we're doing Resolve classes, Avid classes, Premiere Pro, After Effects, all that kind of stuff. So check all that stuff out at MEWShop.com.
And if someone wants to be as successful as Nona Khodai, obviously, sign up for one of our classes. On behalf of Manhattan Edit Workshop, thank you, Josh Apter. Thank you, Jason Benke. Thank you, Nona Khodai, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you so much.